where discipline actually begins. Consider this carefully before anything else. What disturbs you is never the event itself. It is not what happens, not what is said, not what fails to occur. Disturbance begins earlier, and it begins quietly. It begins with thought. An event arrives. It is neutral. It has no instruction, no verdict, no command over you. Yet almost immediately, the mind adds something to it. A judgment. An interpretation. A conclusion about what this means and what must follow. That addition is where agitation enters. This distinction matters because responsibility lives there. If disturbance came from events, you would be justified in waiting for the world to improve. If it came from other people, you could blame them without remainder. But it does not. It comes from what you agree with internally. From the thought you accept as true. Stoic discipline begins at this point, not as suppression, not as denial, but as clarity. The discipline is not about forcing yourself to feel differently. It is about seeing accurately what is happening in your own mind. Thought appears. Judgment forms. Assent is given. Only then does disturbance follow. This is not comforting, and it is not meant to be. It removes excuses. It also restores authority. What you think is not random. What you accept is not inevitable. Responsibility cannot be outsourced, but neither can it be taken from you. Observe what your mind does next. What actually belongs to you? Everything that follows depends on one clear distinction. If you are unclear about what belongs to you, discipline becomes confused effort. You push where nothing moves. You blame where no responsibility exists. You exhaust yourself trying to manage what was never under your authority. Begin with precision. What belongs to you is narrow, but it is absolute. Your judgments belong to you. Your intentions belong to you. Your choices, your use of reason, your assent or refusal, these are yours without exception. No one can step inside this space unless you allow it. What does not belong to you is everything else. Events. Outcomes. The behavior of other people. Their opinions, moods, misunderstandings, praise, or rejection. Even your body's sensations and impulses are not fully under your command. They arise. They change. They pass. This division is not pessimism. It is accuracy. Most frustration comes from confusing these two domains. You try to control outcomes by force of will. You attempt to manage other people's reactions through explanation or restraint. You rehearse arguments in your head long after the moment has passed, as if repetition could alter what already occurred. Notice how much energy is wasted there. Consider a simple example. Someone speaks to you sharply. The sound reaches your ears. That part is not yours. The meaning you assign, disrespect, threat, dismissal, that part is yours. The surge of anger feels immediate, but it only follows the judgment you accepted. You could not stop the sound. You could stop the conclusion. Or consider delay. A plan does not move forward as expected. The delay itself is neutral. It carries no insult. Yet the mind quickly adds a story: incompetence, sabotage, personal slight. With that story accepted, irritation feels justified. But the irritation was not forced on you. It was produced by a mistaken claim of ownership over the outcome. When this boundary is ignored, discipline becomes harsh. You attempt to dominate what cannot be dominated. When the boundary is respected, effort becomes clean. You work only where work is possible. This is why Stoic discipline begins with ownership, not motivation. Motivation fades. Ownership remains. When you know precisely what is yours, you stop negotiating with the world and start governing yourself. This does not mean withdrawal. You still act. You still speak. You still pursue goals. But you no longer confuse effort with entitlement. You aim without demanding. You engage without clinging to results. There is a quiet relief in this clarity. Not because life becomes easier, but because friction is no longer multiplied by false claims of control. You are not responsible for everything that happens. You are responsible for everything you assent to. Return to this distinction whenever agitation appears. Ask one question: is this within my authority, or am I trespassing into what is not mine? The boundary is clear. The mechanism is not yet. The moment you agree. Now we look at what actually creates disturbance. The distinction between what belongs to you and what does not explains where effort should go. But it does not yet explain how reaction forms. That requires examining a single internal sequence that operates constantly, whether you notice it or not. First, an impression appears. An impression is any perception, thought, memory, or sensation that presents itself to the mind. A sound, a message, a facial expression, a sudden thought about the future. Impressions arrive automatically. You do not invite them. You do not prevent them. They are not a failure of discipline. What matters is what happens next. Almost immediately, the mind proposes a judgment about the impression. This is good. This is bad. This is unfair. This is dangerous. This should not be happening. The proposal feels convincing because it is fast and familiar. Then comes the decisive moment. Assent. Assent is agreement. It is the quiet yes you give to the judgment. It is the moment you treat the interpretation as fact rather than suggestion. Only after assent does the judgment harden into disturbance. Only after assent does emotion escalate into loss of composure. This is where freedom lies. Impressions are not optional. Feelings are not optional. Assent is. This is often misunderstood. People say, "I couldn't help feeling angry," and they are correct. The initial feeling is not under command. But anger as a sustained state requires cooperation. It requires you to agree that the judgment behind it is true. Notice the difference. You feel irritation when criticized. That sensation arises. Then the thought appears, this is an attack. If you assent, irritation becomes defensiveness, resentment, or hostility. If you do not assent, the sensation passes without narrative. The body settles. Reason remains intact. Or consider delay again. A project stalls. The impression appears, waiting. The thought follows, this is unacceptable. If you assent, tension grows. You rehearse complaints. You feel wronged. If you withhold assent, the delay remains a fact without drama. You respond when action is possible. Between impression and assent, there is a pause. It may be brief. It may feel almost invisible. But it exists. And that pause is the only place discipline operates. Stoic practice does not aim to block impressions or suppress feeling. That is impossible and unnecessary. It aims to train recognition at the point of assent. To see the judgment as a proposal, not a command. This requires slowing down, not emotionally, but cognitively. Seeing the thought as a thought. Hearing the verdict before signing it. Most people live as if assent were automatic. It is not. It is habitual. And habits can be retrained. When you say, "This thought disturbed me," look again. The thought did not disturb you. Your agreement did. Understanding this does not create discipline. What discipline is actually training? This is where most people misunderstand discipline. They imagine discipline as force, as pressure applied inward, as endurance in the face of resistance. When they fail, they conclude they are weak or inconsistent. But this model is wrong from the start. Discipline is not force. It is training. Force relies on intensity. Training relies on repetition. Force attempts to overpower the mind. Training reshapes how the mind operates before pressure appears. Stoic discipline is the training of attention at the point of assent. You are not training yourself to feel nothing. You are not training yourself to endure endlessly. You are training yourself to recognize judgments as they arise and to choose deliberately whether to agree with them. This distinction matters because willpower is unreliable. It spikes and fades. Training accumulates. It works quietly, even when motivation is absent. Consider how habits form. You do not decide each day how to read, how to speak your language, or how to recognize familiar faces. These actions occur smoothly because they have been trained through repetition. Judgment works the same way. Most people have trained themselves, unintentionally, to assent quickly, to accept the first explanation the mind offers, to treat emotion as evidence. This training produces reactivity, not because the person lacks intelligence, but because the habit has never been examined. Stoic practice reverses this. You practice noticing the impression. You practice labeling the judgment. You practice delaying assent, even briefly. Over time, the pause becomes natural. The space between impression and agreement widens. Reaction slows. Choice returns. This training must occur before stress arrives. Waiting to practice discipline only when you are overwhelmed is like trying to build strength during a collapse. The work is done in ordinary moments, when the stakes feel low and attention is available. This is why Stoic discipline does not aim at dramatic victories. It aims at consistency. You practice with small irritations, minor delays, casual remarks. You train where failure is inexpensive. There is no punishment involved. No self-criticism. Failure is data. If you notice you assented automatically, that noticing itself is progress. The next repetition is informed by it. Discipline here is not rigid. It is precise. You are not denying emotion. You are refusing to confuse emotion with judgment. You are not suppressing impulses. You are examining the claims attached to them. Over time, the mind learns a new default: wait before agreeing. This does not make life passive. It makes action cleaner. You respond based on reason, not reflex. You speak without urgency. You act without inner noise. Training remains abstract unless it appears in daily life. How practice enters the day. This practice is proven in ordinary moments. Discipline does not require special conditions. It does not wait for silence, retreat, or ideal circumstances. It appears in the middle of the day, inside what seems insignificant. That is where it either exists or does not. Stoic practice is simple, but it is not casual. It consists of a small number of actions repeated consistently, without drama. Begin with anticipation. This does not mean expecting the worst. It means expecting accurately. You know interruptions will occur. You know delays will happen. You know people will misunderstand you or speak without care. None of this is surprising. When you pretend otherwise, every inconvenience feels like an injustice. Anticipation prepares the mind without tension. You are not bracing. You are orienting. When the impression arrives, it feels familiar rather than offensive. You recognize it as part of the day, not a violation of it. Then comes the pause. When an impression appears and a judgment follows, pause before assent. One breath is enough. Not to calm yourself, but to interrupt automation. That breath creates distance between the thought and your agreement with it. During the pause, identify the judgment. Name it plainly. This is unfair. This should not be happening. This means something about me. Once named, the judgment loses its disguise as fact. It becomes visible as a proposal. You do not need to argue with it. You do not need to replace it with a better thought. You only need to withhold agreement until reason is present. Most disturbances collapse at this point. The third practice comes later, when the day has ended. Review without guilt or praise. In the evening, recall moments where you reacted quickly and moments where you paused. Do not congratulate yourself. Do not accuse yourself. Both praise and guilt distort attention. They turn practice into performance. Guilt is just another unexamined judgment. It claims failure where there is only information. It adds emotional noise where clarity is needed. Instead, observe. Where did assent occur too quickly? Where was the pause effective? What conditions made practice easier or harder? This review is not a verdict. It is preparation for tomorrow. These practices are quiet. No one sees them. There is no visible signal of discipline. That is why they work. Consistency matters more than intensity. Missing a pause does not undo training. Returning to it strengthens it. The work accumulates invisibly, until reaction slows without effort. This is how theory leaves the page and enters the day. Not through force, but through repeated, ordinary application. When this practice becomes stable, a different kind of freedom appears. What cannot be taken from you? Freedom is often misunderstood. Most people associate freedom with ease, comfort, or the absence of obstacles. They imagine a life where circumstances cooperate and other people behave reasonably. But this kind of freedom is fragile because it depends on what is never fully under your control. Stoic freedom is different. It does not promise relief from difficulty. It does not guarantee favorable outcomes. It does not remove uncertainty. Instead, it locates freedom where interference cannot reach. Freedom remains wherever judgment is governed by reason. When you see clearly what belongs to you, and when assent is trained rather than automatic, authority returns inward. Events still occur. Loss still happens. People still act unpredictably. None of this changes. What changes is where your stability resides. This is why life does not become easier. It becomes simpler. Simplicity here does not mean lack of challenge. It means fewer internal conflicts layered on top of unavoidable facts. You stop arguing with reality after it has already occurred. You stop demanding emotional comfort from conditions that cannot provide it. Consider what cannot be taken from you. No one can force you to agree with a false judgment. No one can compel you to interpret an event as humiliating, threatening, or catastrophic. They can present impressions. They can apply pressure. They cannot sign your assent for you. This is not defiance. It is clarity. Many people confuse freedom with emotional control. They believe freedom means not feeling anger, fear, or grief. But emotions arise naturally. Trying to eliminate them creates tension and self-deception. Stoic freedom is not emotional numbness. It is emotional proportion. You may feel anger without becoming hostile. You may feel fear without becoming paralyzed. You may feel sadness without collapsing into despair. Emotion passes through without commandeering judgment. This distinction matters because comfort is temporary. Comfort depends on conditions aligning. Freedom depends on discipline maintained. Comfort says, I am well because things are going my way. Freedom says, I remain governed even when they are not. This kind of freedom must be maintained. It is not achieved once and secured forever. Each day presents new impressions. Each day requires renewed attention at the point of assent. Nothing outside you must change for this to begin. The work is not heroic. It is deliberate. It does not require isolation or special conditions. It requires remembering, again and again, where your responsibility actually lies. When this is understood, ambition becomes cleaner. Relationships become steadier. Adversity becomes information rather than insult. You are not free because life cooperates. You are free because your judgment is not for sale. Nothing more needs to be added. There is no finish line. There is only upkeep. This is why Stoic practice avoids grand declarations. It focuses on maintenance. On returning to what is yours whenever attention drifts outward. On correcting quietly rather than dramatizing failure. When authority remains inward, External losses do not strip you of yourself. Reputation may shift. Plans may dissolve. Comfort may disappear. Judgment remains available. Holding what is yours. Nothing here requires escalation. The entire structure of Stoic discipline rests on a single responsibility that cannot be transferred. You are responsible for what you assent to. Not perfectly. Not once and for all. But continuously. Events will continue to arrive without asking your permission. Thoughts will continue to present themselves with urgency and confidence. Emotions will continue to rise before explanation is complete. None of this indicates failure. It describes being human. What matters is what you do next. When you remember that thought is the first discipline, responsibility returns to its proper place. You stop waiting for conditions to improve before becoming steady. You stop blaming circumstance for what was agreed to internally. You stop demanding that life feel comfortable before you act with reason. This does not make you flawless. It makes you accountable. There will be days when assent is given too quickly. Moments when irritation takes over before the pause appears. Review these without judgment. Correction is only possible when observation remains clear. Responsibility here is not heavy. It is precise. You are not asked to control the world. You are asked to govern what belongs to you. That is enough. The work is simple. Notice impressions. Examine judgments. Delay assent. Return to reason. Repeat. There is no final state where this is completed. There is only the practice, renewed as often as needed. Freedom, in this sense, is not something you reach. It is something you maintain. Nothing outside you must change for this to begin. No permission is required. No explanation is owed. The discipline is quiet. The authority is internal. Return to the pause. Practice this today in something small.